The weaker sex holds all the aces. The biological power structure rests on two instincts, sex and caring for the brood. Whoever needs, for the satisfaction of one or both of these instincts, a particular individual loses his independence to that individual. To love is to become enslaved. Contrariwise, whoever is loved has the lover in his power. Thus, power equals the ability to make oneself the object of another person's love. Only the human female is in a position, as we have seen, to make herself the object of the male sex drive without becoming equally dependent on the male for instinctual satisfaction. She does not need the man to satisfy her nurturing instincts. She has her children for that. She does not need the man to satisfy her sex drive. She has it under firm control as bait or weapon in the sexual power struggle. Sex, to the woman, is too valuable, as it were, to be wasted on mere self-indulgence. So if it is a question of one sex dominating the other, it can never be the male who dominates, only the female. The first instance of social oppression runs a famous statement by Friedrich Engels, patron and co-author of Karl Marx, is the oppression of woman by man. Engels is confusing force with power. Like so many leftists after him, Engels injected metaphorically a concept of power structures resting on force into the sex war, where it does not apply. Only because a man is physically stronger and able to earn money, Engels believed that this gives the man power over the woman. However, physical force may be helpful in oppressing a social class. It is no way to win control over the other sex. The potential oppressor is never the stronger partner, but always the more helpless one. The potential ruler is never the one driven by desire, but the desired. If it is true that most women are physically and mentally the weaker sex, and that they are more desired by men than desirous, then the first social oppression is the oppression of men by women, not the other way around. The woman usually begins to suffer long after the man has been miserable for a long time. Female power is the foundation of all other power structures. Social power systems that do not rest directly on instinct can never be more than superstructures. Their leaders can rule only in areas of no special value to sex partners and protégés. A system that disregards the power of the really powerful sex is doomed from the outset. It cannot gain adherence. It is by the power of the dominant sex that all systems function at all. Without the consent of women, there could have been no fascism, no imperialism, no inquisition. Men could not have become the tools of such systems, had they not been ruled by women. Only a person attached and subservient to another through his basic social instincts, a man with a family to support, typically, can be sucked into the treadmill of such a secondary system and be driven to commit acts of hypocrisy, terror, and treason. The power of woman is the root of force in others. Church fathers, politicians, and dictators know this unwritten law very well. A ruler's most important political move is courting women and talking their language. He knows that once he has the women with him, he will get the men automatically. As long as the church backs up woman as man's protégé, she can easily induce him to back up the church by letting it teach his children a faith in invisible beings that guarantees the continuance of the church in power. One hand washes the other. As long as politicians promise special social measures for women, they can keep military service and a higher pension age for men with a good conscience. As long as dictators do not press women into army service, they can send male recruits by the thousands into battle. The church did not really come into power until after it had set up woman, in the person of the Virgin Mary, as an object of worship, and where the cult of Mary is still intact, the church is still in power. Jesus himself passed up his opportunity to win over the women. He once said to his mother, "Woman, what have I to do with thee?" And the misogynist apostle Paul did no better in his time. Only when the female as protégé was raised to an institution did Christianity win a massive following, at last. It is therefore entirely possible that the great social revolutionaries invented the oppressed woman for tactical reasons and despite their better knowledge. Did we say that Engels had confused power with force? Perhaps it was the other way around. Suppose he had recognized the real power of women, and made a deliberate bid for it, to secure the victory for his side? It would certainly be odd for men like Marx, Engels, Lenin, Mao, all of whom knew the life of the working class better than anyone to have believed seriously that the worker's wife was worse off than the worker himself. They surely knew that, poverty and too many kids notwithstanding, the worker's wife was somewhat better off even under the inhuman conditions of proletarian life at the outset of the Industrial Revolution, when they and other radicals sought to improve the lot of the working. More, they were good enough politicians to appeal to the working man's wife and exalt her cause as a top priority. Clever, legitimate tactics, but what confusion they sowed in the heads of their followers. Adolf Hitler also adopted such tactics, though with a somewhat different emphasis. Without the support of the German woman, that self-consciously Teutonic female, his own creation, he would never have made it to the top, the position from which he could instigate his great bloodbath. Since the really powerful elements were not men, Hitler could openly advocate his program, war against neighboring countries and the persecution of another race, while the women cheered him on, as we know. No one is saying that women want war more than men do. Whoever wants war, but they are less opposed to it. Because they don't as a rule expect to be sent to the front, war means less of a risk to them personally, because they are not given to thinking beyond their noses. They are much slower to realize all the deadly consequences of war. Who would ever have foreseen, in any case, that even a democratic regime like the British would drop bombs on defenseless civilians, gratuitously, as it turned out, since the bombardment of cities made little difference. It was only the systematic destruction of industrial installations that helped to end the war, and massacre over 500,000 women and children. But the bombers were flown by men, so we may conclude that the women had no great compunctions about all that. The pre-war suffragettes who fought for the vote had omitted to fight for women's participation in the dirty work of war. Although women are nominally as responsible for wars as men, at least where they have the vote, the majority of women by no means regard themselves as armchair soldiers, but rather as pacifists. In post-war Germany, not one of the women who lived 4 years on the pay of a concentration camp guard, all of whom were murderer, ever went on trial. Apart from the few young girls who get involved in leftist militancy or the like, the great masses of women have not, so far, knowingly risked anything for their society. Even the women soldiers of the Israeli army figured only on the sidelines of the Six-Day as well as the Yom Kippur War. Where the shooting is, it's always the men. Who dies in war is decided by the more powerful.